depictions of anything. I don't like that argument for the United States. I don't know about Europe, but in the US, no, I don't think so. I think that's too far.
So are you are like, do you believe hate speech is having a ban on hate speech is a bad thing?
Legally, yes, I don't think that legally the United States should be banning
Really?
hate speech. Yeah. In the US at least. I can't speak to how other countries are set up, but
Okay, are you familiar with Canada's hate speech laws?
nope.
Okay, I can give you a basic rundown. I'm sure you could research it more on your like on your free time, but basically, it's any speech that promotes violence against protected groups. So that would be minorities, black people, Asians, Jews, gays, trans, stuff like that. So if you were to say something like, Jews are evil and they're trying to take over the world, that could conceivably promote violence against that protected group. And similarly, if you said like all trans people or gay people are pedophiles, same kind of thing. That would be banned under Canada's hate speech laws, and you could get prosecuted in different ways, like fine, if you don't pay a fine, certain amount of imprisonment, crap like that. What would the only defense you can have against hate speech was that the speech you were saying wasn't actually hateful and wasn't intended to promote violence. Two, it's actually factual. So if you say anything that can be provably true, so let's say if you said something, 50% of crime is caused by black people, you might get charged with hate speech, but if you could prove that's actually a provable fact, then that wouldn't be hate speech. And stupidly, if you're part of a religious group, that actually protects you against hate speech prosecution. So if you could prove that it's an aspect of your religious belief, then you can't be prosecuted under hate speech. So if you said Jews are the scum of the earth, and then you said, well, I'm Muslim, and it says right here that like Jews need to be eradicated in the Quran, then that would protect you. I don't know why I don't know why they have that provision, but
Okay, wait, what is the point? What about, yeah.
Yeah, so my point is, do you have any particular issue with that?
Fuck, I'm sorry. Could you re-summarize what you just said? That there's provisions where if you do hate speech and it leads to harm or it can lead to harm, it should be illegal or something? I'm so sorry.
So, hate speech is specifically any kind of speech that promotes violence against a protected class of people.
Sure. I think that definition seems like it would be overly broad. I'd be worried about that.
So it's basically the same thing as if it's essentially the same idea behind disturbance of the peace. So if you yell fire in a crowded theater, same kind of idea.
I think that in that, I like that because that's like a very clear in time, like you're saying something and it's designed to produce a particular negative thing immediately, then I think that that's bad. So like incitement crimes where somebody is saying something with the intention of inciting people to lawless activity or unlawful activity, I think that's fine to make that illegal. But just like hate speech in general, I don't think, even if you could say that it might lead to, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Well, I mean, especially for specific cases, like with Jews, for instance, if you heard a Nazi talking about how the Holocaust never happened, the Jews made it up so that they could control the world, and they're trying to turn your kids gay, and they're trying to destroy all of society, and they're killing you with microplastics. Like, that's something that could conceivably and realistically lead to actual violence against that sort of group.
Yeah, it could, but I think that's political speech. I think you have a right to have that, to say that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. If you were in Germany before the Nazis took over, and we're talking about after Hitler was freed from prison, I think there was a 2-year period where he wasn't allowed to speak publicly or write for his newspaper. You would have allowed him to speak publicly and write for his newspaper about how like Jews are evil?
God damn! Oh my god. Yeah, I think in the United States I would. I can't speak to Germany, but yeah, in the U.S., yeah, I think you should.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that would make a difference.
Well, because different countries might have whole different constitutions or values or things. But yeah, for my country, yeah, I would say if they wanted to publish it. I think that those are important rights to be able to speak freely.
So,
Yeah.
so I mean, if you literally saw somebody who had the exact same political beliefs as Hitler, and you saw a similar kind of uprising of fascist ideology, particularly targeted against Jews, you'd be okay with them speaking publicly.
Yes. As long as it didn't qualify for like a direct incitement to violence, like they weren't saying we're going to go kill these Jews here right now or something. Yes.
I don't know why that would matter. Like we already have historical precedent on like what actually happened.
Because then I think what happens is you end up chilling a whole bunch of political speech that becomes your laws become very broad, and what you can criminalize as speech, I think, becomes very dangerous. I think that's not good.
So I would say no. I don't know how I don't know, banning somebody from saying the Holocaust never happened would chill any kind of valid political discussion.
What about somebody saying that I think that kids below the age of 18 should have access to trans health care, and people say this is causing the killing of children?
If you're advocating for access to trans health care,
Yeah.
and somebody says that is killing trans kids.
Yeah, that you're causing people to do mutilation, self-mutilation, self-harm. Yeah.
I don't think under Canada's laws that would actually constitute as hate speech, because there's nothing about that speech that is meant to actually incite hate.
Well, how do you know that?
hate or
Conservatives say that
violence.
they're trying to kill our kids. They're trying to poison our kids. They're trying to make it so we can't reproduce anymore for incoming invaders.
The point is, they're not. The point is, hate speech is an incitement of violence towards a targeted group.
Yeah, and they would say
So
that
if you
trans
were to
speech
have-
is an incitement of violence towards children. That's what usually conservatives argue. That's how they argue for all the book bannings and shit in schools, right?
Right. The problem is, if I were to say, if we allow trans kids to transition, that's going to cause them harm, or it's going to, I don't know, make them commit suicide, or it's mutilating them or something. That type of speech isn't meant to incite violence towards that targeted group.
But do you understand that
you
you're
could say
exercising
there's a bit of
your own
gaslighting.
personal opinion on this, but other people are going to have an opinion that disagrees, right? So that the issue is,
Right,
do you want
and I mean-
do you want a court deciding what type of speech is allowed or isn't allowed when it's just like political speech that could down the road lead to violence?
Well, the argument from the trans community would be that it is causing violence towards trans people because they're not allowed to actually get necessary medical care.
Yeah, but then the argument from conservatives would be
but
that's
the-
not necessary medical care. It's just you're brainwashing children and mutilating them.
Right, but from a legal perspective, if we use the definition of hate speech that's used in Canada, that wouldn't. There's no reasonable expectation that saying we should bar trans care to minors. There's no reasonable expectation that would encourage somebody to, say, shoot up a school because there's a trans kid in there.
Okay, I disagree. I think that
That's
depending
the
on where your
point.
conservatives are at, I think they absolutely could come to that.
Well, there certainly is hate speech against trans people that would constitute hate speech. So calling all trans people or LGBTQ members groomers, that is something that would constitute as hate speech in the Canadian Constitution.
What about calling all conservatives Nazis?
That probably wouldn't, because again, if we were to there's another provision in the Canadian Constitution that protects comedic or hyperbolic speech. So if you were
but then
to
they could just say
explain-
the same thing about trans people being groomers, no?
Probably not. You would have a much harder. You'd have a much more difficult time saying that's hyperbole.
Why?
Well, when you see what they're writing and the way they're writing it, it just seems to have a much more serious tone behind it. The way they react to posts like Ava, Chris, Tyson, like just look at their reactions behind some of the accusations that have come out. Like they're saying all trans people are groomers. We have to like eliminate trans ideology from the planet.
What are people saying? Like we've got like Nazis. Everybody needs to punch a Nazi. Like look at all these Nazis. We have to get rid of them, like we did in World War II. Like we actually, America did like go and kill a bunch of Nazis, right?
Right. Yeah. Nazis aren't a protected class, though.
Okay.
But if you call, like, I'd say, like an advocate for, because the groomer accusation doesn't just go to LGBT people, right? It goes to teachers who are cis and straight who, like, teach these things to kids, right? It's like anyone who's pro-trans is like a groomer to these people, right?
Yeah, right.
Sure, James Lindsay just says, okay, groomer in response to fucking everyone. Yeah. But is that, like,
right,
speech,
but
should that be illegal? Yeah.
Right, but the whatchamacall? I haven't seen this have a political chilling effect in any country that has any sort of sensible hate speech laws, like Canada. So like we could argue a bit of these like weird finer points about whether or not calling like a pro-trans person or a pro-LGBT person a groomer, whether that constitutes hate speech. I haven't really seen this come up in Canada yet, where there's like a criminal trial for somebody saying this on Twitter. So I just don't see this having an actual chilling effect. And again, we know that hate speech does lead to, you know, circumstances like Nazi Germany. So I don't know why you wouldn't be in favor of banning certain forms of speech.
Hold on, I'm about to make this is about to be the sickest fucking guess in the world. I'm so sorry. Hold on, real quick, 1 sec. 2007. Let's fucking go. World's End. I'm an actual god at this. I've transformed into a fucking god. I've transformed into a god. I'm so sorry. Okay, continue. Go ahead.
I would push back against the idea that it was like a permissiveness of speech that got the Nazis into power. Definitely not over like, especially in terms of anti-Semitism, because you mentioned Hitler was banned from speaking until it was 1927. But the Weimar Republic did have censorship laws. They weren't very good. They were massively politicized, but like Der Stürmer was confiscated or taken to court like dozens of times. People were sentenced to jail actually for anti-Semitism or for like advocating for violence. Like Stryker, the guy who ran Der Stürmer, like he was jailed. There were lots of litigations brought up against these people and prosecutions, but the problem is that when Hitler started to gain popularity, it was around the period of the Great Depression when he had actually very tactically put anti-Semitism at the background of his advocacy because he was trying to appeal to like center-right people who were scared of fucking communism and shit. So like he was trying to appeal to people who didn't see anti-Semitism as like a top priority. I just feel like if you're talking about suppressing people like Hitler or in any historical example, the problem is that it's not really their speech or their hatefulness that I think is the thing that needs to be quelled. It's things that they actually do. So with Hitler, the opportunity was not missed at anti-Semitic newspapers or things like that. The opportunity was missed because he tried to coup the government and got away with it, right? And then justified himself with a 4-hour opening statement at the fucking court. Whereas by the standards of that time, they would have he should have just been executed by the standards of 1920s. So I feel like long before the Nazis had like 1% of the vote, there were plenty of opportunities to keep him out of office and out of power forever, but they obviously just didn't take it. I don't think his right to speak, though, was really like...
Well, the thing is, if Nazi Germany had a strong constitution where that sort of hate speech wouldn't be allowed, like the Nazi Party just fundamentally wouldn't have, like, I don't see it really fundamentally being able to exist unless they completely eliminated all of their, like, anti-Semitic bullshit from their political positions.
But they kind of did in a way. So they never got rid of anti-Semitism, but
I know they kind of quieted it down.
Yeah, because their whole thing was like some of these speeches were just like, yeah, it was like fear of communism, like we're not going to get taken over by communists and shit like that, and
Yeah.
also appealing to like the anxieties of the
Well, by
depression
the way,
and
a lot of that
law and
also had to do
order.
with
Yeah.
anti-Semitism. A big reason for why they were going after these communists was because of the Jewish thing.
Yeah, well, it was because of the Jewish thing, but they didn't need to say that because the reason most
Yeah.
people hated communists was because they were violent, not because they were, not because
Be
they
right back, one
thought
second.
they were
Right,
Jewish.
but I
Yeah.
mean, if there was a constitution in place that would not permit hate speech, when
Hmm.
they took power, they wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the things they did. Like Hitler would have been pretty much immediately impeached, and they'd have to call for new elections.
Because I he'd have to get impeached for hate speech when he was in power.
Right.
Well,
Which, because of, yeah, I understand it wasn't a democracy, but we have the luxury of living in a democracy, and we could take advantage of that by having hate speech laws in the Constitution that would prevent such a thing.
yeah, because I think, well, the problem was, and maybe this is like, I don't know if this could ever happen in Canada or like in a more modern society, but I guess the problem was that a lot of the laws that were used to suppress hateful outlets like Der Stürmer and people like Stryker, was those same laws were also utilized when the Nazis took over, right? Because it made it very easy to just ban outlets when you thought that they were threatening, like not just minorities, but also like public safety and things like that. So I don't know, but that's why I always wonder with Canada, because I don't know that much about Canada's hate speech laws, but I feel like it's quite difficult to have a world where people who use the groomer thing, like they get done for hate speech, but people who call conservatives like Nazis or cancer or scum or vermin, it's all hyperbole. You know, like I feel like I don't know how you disconnect that from people's political leanings. You know, because people always hear incitement louder when it's against them, and they go a little bit ambiguous when it's against someone else.
Well, again, things like Nazis, they're not a protected class. So you usually, I think, not even usually, just always, you see these hate speech laws coming into effect when it's against protected classes. So like women, gay, trans people, black people, crap like that.
Mhm.
I haven't seen this have any kind of political chilling effect where if you were to call a political figure like Donald Trump a Nazi, you end up getting arrested, and you're being told, okay, well, this is promoting political violence. That just hasn't happened, and Canada is also a little unique compared to the UK and other countries because we actually have free speech in our constitution. It's just that hate speech isn't protected under free speech, whereas in the UK, and I have seen this actually be a problem in the UK, because you don't have any free speech in your constitution, and there are restrictions not only on hate speech but also obscene speech and obscene
Mhm.
language. I have seen that result in political dissidents being imprisoned for basically no reason other than having a political opinion.
Yeah, yeah, because that's the one that Count Dankula got fucked over by. It had nothing to do
Yeah,
with hate speech. It was to do with obscenity or
yeah.
yeah, grossly offensive material. But for hate, our hate speech laws are. I don't know how it is for you, but for our hate speech laws, the reason I do the Nazi comparison is because the hate speech laws that we have in the UK, like stirring up hatred, is in a way that the speech violation has to be criminal anyway. Like it has to be a form of incitement or like a very high threshold, which is why very few people get done for it. The hate is just the motive. So
Well,
when we see
yeah,
someone who's
similar
done
in
for
Canada.
yeah, so for us, like with that crime of stirring up hatred, which sounds very ambiguous and loose, like the people who get done for that are people who would have been done for incitement anyway. Like I think the number of convictions we get is like less than 10 or 20 a year. That's very, very rare that people get done for that. Is it the same in
Yeah,
Canada?
pretty much, yeah. um I think in the UK it's illegal to deny the Holocaust. In Canada, if you were to deny the Holocaust, you can also be criminally charged with that.
You
So
can be
you
criminally charged in
can
the
just
UK?
casually you can just casually say the Holocaust never happened and then uh, get charged with hate speech.
I don't know if you can do it in the UK. I don't think that's true. I think in Germany it is, but
Yeah, I know in
um,
Germany it is. I think there's other countries in Europe. I'm pretty sure in the UK.
no.
I
Oh,
could be
there's a
wrong. I'm
petition
not
for it
from
in
there, but
2021 saying that they should make it illegal. So I don't think it's been
okay.
changed since then.
In the US, I don't know if this is considered an aggravating factor. I don't think that's the right term, but I know that for what you're saying about how the hateful speech is speech that's already illegal, that's kind of how it works in the US, where we have like quote unquote hate crimes, where if you kill somebody or you assault somebody, like it's already a crime, but then if they find out you did it because of a racial motivation, now
Yeah,
you can add
it's
that
another
on.
aggravating factor. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not hateful in and of itself. Like you can't just criminalize hateful behavior. It's only if it's already a crime. That could be like a thing that you add on or something. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's why
like
I felt like when you were saying hate speech, it sounded like hateful rhetoric that maybe doesn't cross like a criminal threshold should come under it as well,
no,
right? Or
so what I mean by hate speech, and again, you can look up the Canadian definition of hate speech. It's any kind of speech that is targeted towards a protected group where you are inciting violence against that group.
right.
So, clear incitement of violence would be all black people should be enslaved, put in chains because they're subhuman animals. That would be considered a clear incitement of hate and violence. Especially if you were to say we should just go out and like club all the blackies. That would clearly be an incitement of violence and would be prosecuted under hate speech. I would say most criminal convictions would fall under that kind of incitement anyway. But the way hate speech is defined in Canada, again, it would be anything that would reasonably be expected to result in violence towards a protected class. So if you were to spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories talking about how Jews are trying to kill and poison us all by putting microplastics in the water, and they've also rolled out this vaccine to like sterilize and make your kids gay, and they're trying to crash the economy to make us all poor, and they're actually all Satanists. Those sorts of conspiracy theories, if you would convince somebody of them, you would expect an individual to rationally come to the conclusion that they should actually commit violence against that group of people because they being convinced that they're committing violence against them.
Yeah, it just depends on what the threshold would be in that case then, because I know that in the UK, when the reason the number of convictions is so low is because that speech does have to be an insanely high threshold. So like maybe if someone said what you said, but it was like over a series of tweets for a while, they probably wouldn't get like criminally charged for it. But if there's someone who gives like a very inflammatory speech about Muslims in the middle of the street in front of a crowd and says like and uses very violent rhetoric and says like and points to like the Muslim community that's like 20 minutes away, and then there's a riot afterwards, then that's like a
Yeah.
better example. But it sounds like when you mentioned Holocaust denial, for example, like it sounds like you want to include that into like a reasonable person would be expected in that to incite violence. Is that what you were saying earlier?
Because Holocaust denialism is connected with all of these other conspiracy theories against Jews, I would say it's totally reasonable to include Holocaust denialism under hate speech and a type of speech that could incite violence towards a certain group.
So someone goes on Twitter and starts concern trolling about the wooden doors. That's like a crime.
Um, what that the I'm not familiar with the wooden doors thing.
Oh, there's this theory, something about like, you ever heard Nazis say that the fucking the original doors for the gas chambers were wood? So why would they be gassing people with wooden doors? Because gas can get through the doors.
Okay.
Yeah, it's bullshit, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that would. I don't think that would cross that threshold. If you were to say something like only 200,000 Jews at most were killed, not 6 million, that would definitely cross that threshold.
So if someone lies about the numbers, that's enough to be criminal.
I believe so.
Would that be more or less? Is that the case in Canada? That's definitely the case in the UK, because obviously that wouldn't be seen as incitement. But
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm pretty sure. And I'm all in favor of that. I don't know why these people should be able to walk around saying the stupid shit.
because I'm trying to think of all the kinds of harmful disinformation that there is right now, and how many people you would have to be prosecuting to enforce
Well,
that
yeah.
really clearly, because like that
Well-
means anti-vaxxers, they spread disinformation that gets people killed, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I wouldn't necessarily be against that either. Like, there has to be something done about this retarded misinformation. And I think things like Holocaust denialism is not something that you want rampant in society. I think that would objectively make society much worse if you have a large portion of the population, especially a majority, who think either no Jews died or it was only a few thousand. I don't want to live in a society like that, and I think there should be laws protecting certain societal standards when it comes to truth and information. I don't think we've crossed a threshold yet. I think we might be close to where vaccine misinformation should be kind of legally prosecuted. By the way, we used to do this. Back in the...
Okay, wait. I believe you.
Back in the 1800s.
Yep, I believe it happened. I disagree with it now. Okay, we got the argument. Anything else?
No, not really.